That is indeed a disturbing and negative factor for Bitcoin. Now, ask yourself this question. Has that happened on the price of Bitcoin right now? Hey guys, Alessio here. Hope you're well and making an update for you on Bitcoin. So many have been asking me to look at the chart of Bitcoin and essentially answer a question many have been asking. First of all, is Bitcoin truly in a bear market? And if so, is Bitcoin heading towards 50K and 25K? Or is it more likely that Bitcoin is still in a bull market and probably could test new highs in 2026? So as we're approaching the new year, let's take another look at the chart of Bitcoin and examine what could happen to Bitcoin in the next few months as we begin 2026. All right, guys, join me. All right, guys, welcome back. Hope you've had a wonderful holiday so far and a relaxing Christmas. As I mentioned in my previous video, I'm currently in Florida, staying with some family, and look at this beautiful area here and wonderful weather. And I'm using the holiday here to catch up on some books I wanted to read. For example, one book I'm reading right now is about the three geniuses of Germany, and that is Hölderlin, Kleist, and Nietzsche, some of the great German writers and philosophers. All right, guys, let's talk about Bitcoin. So some of you have been asking me for an update about the chart of Bitcoin, and essentially what I want to give you in this video is my honest take, the things that matter right now in regards to Bitcoin. So here's the first question I want to ask you about Bitcoin. Do you believe that Bitcoin is in a bear market? Now, have a think about that question. My guess is that quite a majority of you, the majority of people who are watching this video, will probably say that Bitcoin is in a bear market. They'll say yes. And that's probably because, well, Bitcoin has dropped by about 35 to 40% from its highs in October at $126,000 to the lows just near 80K or above 80K in November. And that huge drop that occurred in the price of Bitcoin has essentially changed sentiment in a negative way towards the crypto. So a lot of people are saying, well, look, Bitcoin has dropped so significantly that surely it's obvious, according to them, that Bitcoin is in a bear market. Again, that's not my view, that's their view. And by the way, some people mention the time cycle for Bitcoin. They say, well, Bitcoin goes through this 3 or 4 year time cycle where we seem to enter a bear market every 4 years approximately. And they say because of this time cycle that Bitcoin is now in a bear market. Now, my guess is most of you already know my opinion about the time cycle. As you probably know, I think that price always comes first before time. So even though I think time cycles are important, nevertheless, for me, it's price über alles, price above everything, okay? That means time comes second to price. In other words, price action must confirm or increase the probability of a time cycle. And I do not think, I'm going to explain to you why, I do not think there's sufficient evidence to show that Bitcoin has entered the bear market. By the way, guys, before we continue, if you have not yet signed up for the special Christmas and New Year offer to become a member, for $1 for 30 days. Go ahead and check it out. The link is in the description. And guys, as a member, you can check out and watch my member videos, which contain much more detailed analysis and often with Elliott waves on the chart of stock markets, gold, and Bitcoin. Again, that's $1 for 30 days. And after 30 days, you get the same special discount rate as all our existing members. And remember, guys, this special offer expires soon by the end of New Year's Day. All right, guys, let's go back to Bitcoin. So the question I asked earlier was this. Do you believe that Bitcoin is in a bear market? Now, if your answer is yes, and you do believe that Bitcoin is in a bear market or a downtrend, then here's the thing. That means that you believe that Bitcoin is topped for the next 12 months, at least for the next couple of years, and that Bitcoin is likely going to drop in the next year or so to 50K and 25K. And the reason is this, that in a bear market, on average, Bitcoin has dropped by 80% from its highs, okay? If you look back at previous bear markets, typically Bitcoin drops by about 70 to 80% from its highs. So here's the thing, guys. If you truly believe that Bitcoin is in a bear market, then you must accept that what you also believe is that Bitcoin has topped for the next 12 months and that Bitcoin is going to drop to 50 to 25K over the course of the next 12 months or the next couple of years. Now, have a think about that. If you're saying to me right now that you do not believe that Bitcoin has topped, and you do not believe that Bitcoin is going to drop to 50K or 25K in the next 12 months, that means you do not believe that Bitcoin is in a bear market. You believe that Bitcoin is still in a bull market, or that we need further data or information and evidence to prove to us whether Bitcoin is in a bear market or a bull market. In other words, you're remaining rather neutral. And here's the thing, guys. I do not believe that there is sufficient data, information, or evidence to show to us or prove to us that Bitcoin has entered a bear market. Now, that may come as a surprise to some of you, and some of you are probably going to write angry comments to me, again, talking about time cycles and Bitcoin has dropped below the 50 simple moving average on the weekly chart, and that nonsense. Guys, I don't care. I don't want to hear it. I don't want to hear it because that is not how you can find out whether Bitcoin has entered a bear market. That's not how it works. Now, if you've seen my previous videos, then you know what I'm driving at here. The first thing you need to identify whether a market like Bitcoin has entered a bear market is ask yourself, has it broken? Has the price broken key support levels. Now, of course, I am aware that Bitcoin has broken the weekly 21 EMA and has dropped significantly below it. I am aware of that, and that is indeed a disturbing and negative factor for Bitcoin. However, just because price or Bitcoin here has dropped below its weekly 21 EMA by itself is not sufficient to show to us that Bitcoin has entered a bear market or a long-term downtrend. You see, guys, if you look at previous times when Bitcoin has broken and dropped below its weekly 21 EMA and the 50 simple moving average on the weekly charts, a good example probably is the one in the year 2020, when Bitcoin sharply dropped below its weekly 50 simple moving average. You see right there. But look what happened. It very quickly then bottomed and then bounced, rallied, and started a new bull market. The same thing happened in the previous year, as you can see in this example. So we have to remember that just because Bitcoin has dropped below its weekly 50 and the 21 EMAs, by itself, that's not enough to show to us that Bitcoin has entered a bear market or a downtrend. And remember, guys, a bear market is when price moves deliberately over the course of many months in a downward trend or trajectory. Now, for me personally, what needs to happen to increase the probability that Bitcoin has entered a bear market or long-term downtrend, firstly, here's what we need. We need a break of support or key support. In this case, a break of market structure on the weekly chart. And that would be, for example, if by the way, Bitcoin was to drop below the spring lows, so the lows that were made in the price of Bitcoin back in April near 74K, then a break of that level, a sustained break of that level near 74K, would increase the probability that Bitcoin has entered a bear market. At the time I'm making this video right now, that has not happened. Now, maybe by the time you're watching this video, perhaps, maybe it has happened, I don't know. But at the present moment, as I'm making this video right now, near the end of 2025, that has not happened. Bitcoin has not as yet broken key support at the spring lows. That's key point number one. And as long as Bitcoin stays above that spring low, as yet there is no high probability indication that Bitcoin has entered a bear market. Again, why? Because there's been no break of market structure. Okay, let's go to key point number two. So the second key point is this, that typically in a bear market, you see a rally, a corrective rally, back to resistance, like a 21 weekly moving average, and then rejection. Here's an example for you from the year 2022. You can see that Bitcoin rallied in that year. So Bitcoin rallied back after the drop that occurred. So there was an initial drop, then Bitcoin rallies back correctively to the 21 weekly moving average, and then fails to stay above it. In other words, price gets rejected from the weekly 21 EMA, and then price forms a red bar, it drops back down below the resistance level, and then continues the downward trend. In other words, a rejection from the weekly 21 EMA after some kind of a rally or a bounce, that's the second most important indication or signal that we're entering a bear market. Now, ask yourself this question, has that happened on the price of Bitcoin right now? No, it hasn't. Bitcoin has not yet rallied or bounced correctively towards the resistance level at the weekly 21 EMA. And by the way, I think that's going to happen in the next several weeks. I think likely as we enter 2026, perhaps in the beginning of 2026, we may very well see some kind of a strong bounce or rally towards the weekly 21 EMA. And that's going to give us clues as to whether we're entering a bear market or not. And as I've just said a few minutes ago, as yet, we've not seen a bounce or a strong rally in the price of Bitcoin as I'm making this video. But here's the thing, guys. If the next bounce or rally in the price of Bitcoin towards the weekly 21 EMA, if that bounce or rally is corrective in structure, and if the bounce gets rejected from the weekly 21 EMA, which could be in the region of about 100K or 99K, then that rejection or failure at the weekly 21 EMA would be a strong sign that we're entering a bear market. And by the way, guys, even if Bitcoin were to drop and test the lows of the spring, so the spring lows near 74K, if Bitcoin was to drop and test that level, I still think we could see a strong rally and bounce afterwards. A strong bounce and rally towards the weekly 21 EMA. And guys, I would say the third and most important reason why I still don't think Bitcoin has entered a bear market is because of this. Yes, the stock market. You see, guys, the stock market, the S&P, for example, has still remained strong and positive and in a bullish mode. For example, the S&P at the moment, as I'm making this video, is not far away from the 7,000 level. And I think as long as the stock market, the S&P, for example, stays above the November-October lows, as yet there's no sign of a bear market or reversal in trend. And the reason why this matters is because Bitcoin and the stock market typically have a positive and close correlation. So as I'm sure you know, in the past, Bitcoin and the stock markets have typically moved in tandem in close correlation. So it's very unusual, in my opinion, for Bitcoin to be in a bear market and downtrend, as many people believe, and for the stock market to remain in a bull market and uptrend. Now, let me say this. There are some analysts out there, some of them very good friends of mine, who do believe this, who do believe that Bitcoin and the stock market probably have decoupled and they can move in opposite directions in different trends. So it is possible that Bitcoin could be in a downward trend or bear market and for the stock market to be in a bull market and uptrend. However, I have to tell you, on the balance of probabilities, I think that's not very likely, because usually when Bitcoin enters a bear market, the stock market also follows and moves into a bear market. And the opposite is also true. Usually when the stock market is in a bull market and uptrend, Bitcoin also remains in a bull market and uptrend. So personally for me, as long as the stock market, the S&P for example, remains in a bull market and an uptrend, which it is at the moment, as yet I'm not prepared to accept that Bitcoin has entered a bear market. Bitcoin, in my view, is forming a correction, a temporary corrective pattern, but as yet, for me, there is not sufficient evidence to show that Bitcoin has entered a long-term bear market and downtrend. Again, remember the three things I just mentioned in this video. First, we need a break of key support levels. We have not got that. We have not broken the support levels at the spring lows. Number two, we have not seen a rally to the 21 weekly moving average that gets rejected. We need that to increase the probability that we're entering a bear market. We haven't got that as yet. And thirdly, the stock market has not yet broken key support levels. The stock market remains in a bull market and uptrend. And personally for me, I think it's highly unlikely for Bitcoin to enter a long-term downtrend and bear market without the stock market doing the same. Now, it could be the stock market is lagging behind Bitcoin. Some of you are probably thinking that. But if that's the case, the stock market needs to confirm and prove that by breaking below the November, October lows. If the stock market, the S&P for example, were to break down and fall below the November, October lows in the next few months, then yes, I would probably change my mind and say that probably Bitcoin has entered a bear market. But as yet, that has not happened. As mentioned, the stock market remains strong and in a bull market. And as long as that is the case, we have not yet seen strong indications that Bitcoin has reversed into a downtrend. On the contrary, if you look at the monthly chart, you can see on the monthly chart, Bitcoin remains above this trend line you're seeing here, this upward trend line, and above its monthly 21 EMA. All right, guys, before I finish the video, let me just say a couple of things. Firstly, if you have not yet signed up to the important class that Charlie and I are doing in January, this is a special one-day educational class on trading and technical analysis. I'm going to cover some important lessons in technical analysis, and Charlie Burton is going to bring his 28 years of experience as a trader into this class as well. So if you have not yet signed up for this class, remember the discount expires on New Year's Day. So go ahead and check it out on that link you see there, protradingworkshop.com. And the second thing is, as I mentioned before, if you have not yet signed up for the Christmas and New Year offer for our membership, go ahead and do so on that link you see right there. And that is $1 for 30 days. Thank you very much indeed, guys. Have a very happy new year and a brilliant 2026.